Welcome to another maths tutorial. Today we'll be looking at transposing formulae. This is our part 2 video, so if you haven't watched part 1, I would recommend that you watch part 1 before you watch part 2. Our first example, change the subject of the formula to x. And in this case, we have y equal to x plus 1 all over 2. What this really means is that we want to get the x by itself. We want to isolate the x. So it therefore means that we need to get rid of this 1. We also need to get rid of this 2 so that we can get the x by itself. Our first step now is basically to get rid of this 2, which is in the denominator. So basically trying to get rid of that fraction there. And in doing so, the x is being divided by the 2. So to get rid of that 2, we need to do the opposite of divide, which is to multiply. So we do times 2, and we're multiplying all of that times 2. We do times 2 on our left as well. 2 divided by itself, that's 1. So now I'm left with 2 times y, 2y, and that's equal to x plus 1. We're almost there. Now, the only other thing that we need to get rid of is this plus 1. And to get rid of this plus 1, we need to do the inverse operation, which is to minus. So we will minus 1 from both sides of the equation. So that's x plus 1 minus 1. And now I'm left with 2y minus 1 equals to x. 1 minus 1, that gives 0. And this was my aim. I wanted to get the x by itself. So this is the end of this question. Now let's look at a second example. In this example, we have y equals 3x minus 2 all over 8. And again, we're trying to make x the subject of the formula. So we need that x by itself. Everything else that surrounds it, we need to get rid of. We'll start by getting rid of what's in the denominator, which is 8. The x is being divided by 8, so to get rid of that 8, we need to do the opposite operation, which is basically to multiply by 8. So we times 8, and that's all of that. And then we do times 8 on our left as well. So now we have 8 times y. That gives me 8y equals to, these will go, that was the aim anyway, because 8 divided by itself, that gives 1. So I'm left with 3x minus 2 on my right. Now I need to get rid of this negative 2 minus 2 here. So I need to do the opposite operation, which is to add 2 to both sides. So I do 8y plus 2 equals to 3x minus 2 plus 2. And again, next step would have been 8y plus 2 equals to 3x minus 2 plus 2, that gives me 0. And then now I have 8y plus 2 equals to 3x. My aim is to get x by itself, so I still need to get rid of this 3. So to do so, it therefore means that this 3 is being multiplied by x. So I need to do the opposite operation, which is to divide both sides of the equation by 3. So divide by 3, and it's all of this divide by 3, which therefore means I can write my left hand side as 8y plus 2, because it's all of it being divided by 3. I can write it like that, and that's equal to x on my right hand side. And that's how we get x to be the subject. Now let's look at a third example. We have y is equal to x over 2 plus 5, and again our aim is to make x the subject of the formula, so we need to get that x by itself. Again, remember we said that we start by getting rid of the one that's furthest away from the x that we trying to get by itself, and in this case this 5 would have been furthest from it, so we start by getting rid of that 5. It's a plus 5, so to do so we do the inverse operation, which is to minus 5 on both sides. So we write y minus 5 is equal to x over 2 plus 5 minus 5. Now I have y minus 5 is equal to x over 2. 5 minus 5, that gives me 0. I do not need to write it. Wow, lovely. Now I need to get the x by itself. It's not by itself. I still need to get rid of that 2 in the denominator. So I need to do the inverse operation, which is to multiply both sides by 2, given that the x is being divided by 2. So I do times 2 on my right, and I also do times 2 on my left, and it's everything on my left that I need to multiply by 2. So now on my left I have 2 times y, because we're applying distributive law. 2 times a minus 5 give me minus 10 there, equals to, we agree that these cancel out each other. So I'm left with, on my right, x, and that was my aim, to get the x by itself. So now I have 2y minus 10 equals x for my final answer. Let's look at our fourth and final example for this video. So we have y equals 3x over 5 plus 1. And again, remember that we're trying to make x the subject. We need the x by itself on one side of the equation. So everything that surrounds it, I need to get rid of. We always start by getting rid of the one that's furthest away from the x. In this case, the 1 is furthest away, so we get rid of that plus 1. To do so, it therefore means that we do the inverse operation, which is minus 1 from both sides of the equation in order to keep it balanced. So we have y minus 1 equals to 3x over 5 plus 1 minus 1. And if you're really confident, you don't have to write this step, because 1 minus 1 will give you 0. Now we have y minus 1 equals to 3x over 5, and again we agree 1 minus 1, that gives 0, so I do not need to write it. Now my next step is basically to get rid of the fraction. In this case, this 5 in the denominator, I need to get rid of it. To do so, it therefore means I need to do the inverse operation. The x is being divided by 5, so to get rid of this 5, it means that I need to multiply both sides of the equation by 5. And remember, it's all of my left hand side times 5. So now let's see what I have left. We agree that this 5 divided by this 5 here gives 1. And then on my left I have 5 times y gives me 5y. 5 times minus 1 gives me a minus here, and then that's a minus 5. And that's equal now to, on my right I have 3x. Looking lovely so far, but we still need to get rid of that 3 because we need the x by itself. This 3 is being multiplied by the x, so in order to get rid of it, it therefore means I need to do the inverse operation, which means I'll divide both sides of the equation by 3. So I do all of this divide by 3, all of this divide by 3, and we agree that on my right hand side, this 3 divided by itself will give me 1. So on my right, I'm just left with x. And on my left, I'm still left with 5y minus 5 all over 3. And that's it for the final example in this video. Please don't forget to click that subscribe button, like and share this video. More videos coming soon.